Hey guys, want to welcome you all to the panel. Thank you so much for spending this Sunday with us. I know there's a lot going on in the city, so we really do appreciate you being here with us. I'm going to have Lex, who is moderating today's panel, introduce the panelists, but I just again want to say how grateful we are you're here and also how proud Stoop Pigeon is to sponsor this panel talking about this very important information. Lex, take it away, buddy.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. So, yes, the energy. It is a Sunday. We're going to carry this through all of next week and into Pride and beyond. I am so honored to be moderating our panel today. My name is Lex. My pronouns are he, him. I am an LGBTQIA+ educator, consultant, and public speaker. And my whole mission is about cultivating spaces that move past inclusion into affirmation and belonging. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today on our panel. So because we have such powerhouse panelists with us, I would love for them to introduce themselves. Folks, let's do names, pronouns if you use them and are comfortable sharing, and let us know who you are. Like, what do you want our people to know about you? And then as you know, I've got some questions to talk about our lived experiences as queer and trans athletes. So, starting this way.
Take it over.
Thanks, Lex. Thank you all for being here. My name is Denise Aquino. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the founder of Growing in Color, which is a podcast turned platform that amplifies the voices of color in the maybe mostly white sport of growing. Thank you for having me.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Cameo Hazelwood. I am finishing up medical school this week, actually. Here in Philadelphia, so I've been here over 10 years now. I played soccer at the University of Pennsylvania in college, and I played soccer internationally in Guyana, South America, in World Cup and Olympic qualifiers. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. So I am Tony Bono, he, him, and I am a retired professional soccer player, 13 years, went to Drexel University, All-American there, and I will say I've been married to my husband for 32 years, and I am excited to be on this panel. These are some amazing people here, and I hope we get to have a great conversation, and I'm looking to learn from each and every one of us.
Hi, my name is Natasha Amy, she, her. I am married to my wife for 4 years, aspiring for this gentleman here, though. That would be. I run a Referee Ready, which is a training program for referees. I'm also a women's college basketball referee. Just worked the Final Four in Phoenix, which was awesome. And I also have a firm where we do investments into emerging markets. So we're looking into South Africa for the BAL, which is the Basketball Africa League. And I leave for Rwanda on Tuesday.
Okay, thanks, y'all. So to start us off, it is no mystery to us the importance of athletic spaces in sports, right? One, it made our community space here today and the lovely people we get to be in conversation with, and also the joy and the power that comes from that personal development in those spaces. So let's talk a little bit about what was it like as athletes in your space with your identities and being able to live your truth or not. Like, what does it mean to be authentic in sports spaces? And then how does that potentially change with time? Or if we, for lack of better words, with quotes coming out and how continuous that process may be, so that when we're talking about authenticity, that means something or can mean something different for each person. And a huge part of allyship for any marginalized identity is to no longer make assumptions. So I don't want to make assumptions about what y'all's experience was like in athletics because, frankly, I don't know. And the only way for y'all to know my experience as a trans athlete is for me to tell you what it was like for me to switch teams in college. So let's get a little bit of a deep dive into authenticity in sports. Would you like to start us off?
Yeah, I'll start. By the way, I'm from New York, so I'm not afraid to start things. Maybe a little too authentic. I think the wonderful thing regardless of any sport is that the playing field should be level, right? The rules apply to everyone. The ball doesn't care it's the game is the game. The rules are the rules, the ref calls the plays.
Come on.
The ref calls the plays. And the playing field should be level. And so I think what was so wonderful, what I was telling these wonderful folks before getting on this panel today was that I was a really shy kid before getting into sports. And to be able to be seen for the content of my character when I was out there, whether I was playing softball, insert your lesbian joke here, whether I was playing softball, whether I was playing basketball, whether I was rowing or coxing, I was seen for the content of my character and not for any other identity, not for my race, not for my gender. And so I love that sport kind of leveled that out and gave me that opportunity. And that was 20 years ago, right? And to live in a world now where the next generation is still dealing with barriers, ceilings, and oppression, it's not something that we can stand for, and that's why we're all sitting here.
Exactly.
Yeah, I really think of sports as kind of the great connector. It can connect nations and it can connect people as you, like you said, the game is the game, and really just focusing on that. And I think to that end, sports can really play a really significant role in connecting us as people as well. And I think back to my college experiences, which is kind of when I had that sort of coming out process, you can say. Starting out in college, I really didn't tell anyone specifically that I was gay or lesbian and that I identified that way at the time, using those words. But I would just say, for example, like if I had a girlfriend, or just say she, and just kind of go from there. And so I think of less of like a coming out as really a letting people in. So when I choose to open up that side of myself and let people in, that's kind of how I determine how they react and how we move forward from that. I think we'll discuss a little bit more about, how we feel open to talking with people and who we feel open to talking with people, but I like to think of it less as kind of coming out, which is something that we do every day, really, telling people how we identify or who our partner is. We do that multiple times a day, and it's more to me of like letting people in.
And that's such beautiful language there too. And the whole part of language is that it can be this beautiful bridge so that we can actually find people with those similar experiences and build community. And also we don't want to put ourselves back into those boxes that we fought so hard to be expanded from. So even your intentional language with, like coming out is actually that process of letting someone in and building that trust to see if they're a safer person. And so much of what, frankly, like we need in this world more of is having people identify themselves as safer people for us so that we can feel enough of that trust to share who we are and be supportive in that. So yes, intentional language and those safer people where we get to share who we are. Mm-hmm.
All right, so I will say I am the old gay up here, okay? Seasoned gay, thank you. So my experience is much different than most of the people here. So my experience was I didn't come out when I was in college. I didn't come out playing in pros because it was not accepted. I had the opportunity, though, to peek my head out and let people know where I stood on a lot of political issues and how to help. So when I was playing professionally, I started a not-for-profit called Tony's Tykes, and it dealt with pediatric AIDS patients. So it wasn't that I was allowed to do that for AIDS patients, but because it was pediatric AIDS patients, the team let me do that. So, but that was also my way of just like putting my foot out into the world to let people know that this really meant something to me without coming out. And I tell you, a lot of people realized that I was gay when I did that. So I will say also, the gentleman right here, Drew, Drew started the Falcons back in, and I hope I get it right, 1987. 89, okay. I'm giving you 2 extra years. When I joined the Falcons, it's the Philadelphia LGBTQ plus soccer team. When I joined the Falcons, the first practice I went to, there was a guy and a girl up against the goalposts making out. And I thought, I am at the wrong practice. And it just was, they were inclusive in the team. And I was like, this is a pretty cool environment. So thank you, Drew.
Shout out to you, Jay. I think, for your question, Alex, like, for me, basketball, when I was playing, people were identifying as gay, but they weren't saying it out loud. And for me, I've always liked men and women, but I didn't really necessarily put myself in a box for that. But I think the way I was raised was more so like just love everybody, right? Like we're all trying to do our best, and everyone's got to struggle, and everyone's got to cross the bear. And so if they love what they love, and it's not affecting you, then really what's the problem, right? And so for me, like going to fishing, same type of thing. A lot of the women who are in charge, who actually run what I do, identify as gay themselves, right? And so it's not really necessarily looked down upon in that realm, but it's definitely something to be cognizant of because some of the areas that I cover, you're laughing because in the middle of America sometimes, or maybe some of the depths of the South where some of our laws have changed erroneously, where I have to be aware of that, right? And so for me, I think that as long as you kind of lead with love, and I think that was one of the things that I tried to do the last few years, is just like as the anger has kind of jumped up a lot, knowing what my life and my walk of life is, I just decided to leave it off, right? And wherever they kind of fall in that realm, great. If you want to follow me, great. But, I'm not going to come out being adversarial. The way I choose to live my life is my own prerogative, and whatever you do between your sheets is your problem, right? So, I hopefully, as people can see us up here in sport and many different facets, we can inspire people to live their truth, whatever that is for them.
And on the note of love, right? Like love is a verb.
Yes.
Love is an action. Love is only as powerful as the ways that we're actively showing that in our everyday lives. So if the words, they can feel nice, but if it's not backed up with action, then what are we actually doing here? So to be able to be in spaces where we can feel that love and we can see that love so that we get to not just survive, but to thrive, that's a huge part of it. And the love piece and empathy, right? So when we were designing our event today, we really wanted to talk about storytelling and having open hearts and open minds and having the conversations, right? So as we're talking about here too, it's not even necessarily that we're trying to change people's perspectives and beliefs, but no, like we want to be able to reach people where they are and to see that shared humanity and that shared dignity. And it also starts with where we're raised, right? Our schools, our families, our religious communities, wherever we are, we completely absorb that. So quick shout out to my parents that are here. I love you, Mom and Dad. Where having that love and having that community, and it isn't always easy. We've had our journey and we're all right here. And so being able to, as an advocate and a community educator, I always say like having empathy as the way that we disarm hate and disarm ignorance. Because the best way to lead is with that love. So leaning into that love, also oftentimes, unfortunately, people may perceive our stories, whatever it may be, with discomfort. But how do we help folks kind of move through that discomfort? Because we know that no important social change ever happens when there isn't at least a little bit of discomfort. So thinking about our roles and what we want to experience and see, moving past just surviving into thriving and living authentically as ourselves, what are some of those pieces that you've experienced that you want to be able to see out in the world? That's a big one. And I gave you like my ADHD brain was like, here's 5 separate things. Feel free to select it from a platter, whichever one you remember.
I'll try. I'll for the challenge. If I understand any of your questions correctly, this is my response. We will try. I think the important part is, or one of the things that I've learned in my experience, which may not speak for every experience, and I want to just acknowledge that, is that don't ask for permission. Just maybe ask for forgiveness, maybe, but just do it. Like I've been waiting for someone to make this space. I've been waiting for someone to put a seat at the table for me. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna build my own table. I'm just gonna build my own seat. I'm gonna make sure other people have seats too. And I'm going to make sure that my platform has a mic that's big enough for all the people who want it. And having done that, especially with rowing and roller, having done that in a world where you see, the Winklevoss twins as your typecast of who the sport is, it really has just redefined what the space means for people and how inviting the space can be, especially a water sport that you have here in Philadelphia. The Schuylkill River is right there, and when the banks of the river and the people rowing on the river look completely different from each other, what kind of problem do we have there, And to give folks a platform where their stories are the centerpiece, it really humanizes what kind of spaces we can take up in this sport. So maybe I answered your question, Lex?
Yeah, even I don't know. I love what you said. Yes.
But thank you for challenging us.
Yeah, I agree. I think just what I'm thinking about is kind of, again, back to that idea of how do we let people in? How do we build these spaces and these communities? I think about what it really comes down to when you're talking to other people, whether it's allyship or with friends, is having that active discussion and active engagement. I think that's when I can feel really safe in opening up after I've said something, and the next thing out of the other person's mouth is some sort of respectful reflection, right? So, are we having a discussion and remaining open? Everyone has different beliefs, and that's fine. But are we engaging in community with each other? And I feel like that's where a lot of really growth comes. And I will also acknowledge that I think that first step is a brave step to take, especially when you don't know another person's beliefs, for example. Having the confidence and the bravery within yourself to open up. I think that's really important.
All right, so being the seasoned guy again, I'm going to just go back to when I was, I'll say closeted. It was a chosen family. So I would talk to people, and when you felt comfortable with people, I did come out a few times while I was playing pro. And I will tell you, the one person really loved me, and then she turned on me. So she came and we had an argument, and I think she wanted more, even after like a relationship with me. She came back to me one day and said, I will tell everyone what you are. And I asked her to leave my home, and I never talked to her again. But then the anticipation, like I'm going to practice the next day, did she tell anybody? So it's the respect that you have with people when you feel comfortable. So a lot of us have a chosen family, right? And I will say, again, with the Falcons, they were my chosen family for so many years and still are. I hold them near and dear to me. But I will say we had my first day tournament I went to over in London, and one of our players had his mom and dad there. And Stephen Conley. And I said to Stephen, I said, someday I hope that my mom and dad will be able to meet my friends. And that day came. And so I looked at Stephen because he was there, and I was like, it finally happened. But I had Stephen as a role model to say that's somewhere where I need to get to with my family. So.
Thank you. I was going to say, thank you for sharing. That's so much fun. No, I mean, I just think about, I was saying this to my wife the other day, and the thing that I love about our generation is like, if there's not a spot, no offense to your generation, I forgot. If there's something that we feel like we need, like we've been creating it, right? So, I think about just my daughter the other day. She goes to French immersion school. One of her favorite teachers came in, said she was engaged, and she said she was engaged to a woman. We were like, what? Like, that would have never happened when I was in school. But like, shout out to that young lady, like, I guess coming out to kids, but like, it wasn't weird for any of those children in those classrooms because the parents that are running those kids are like, you should love everyone, right? And so, for us, I just think about like how when we wanted certain things or we didn't feel comfortable having certain things, like we are forcing the area in this generation to be like, no, there's a spot for you, and we're gonna make a spot for you, and it's a safe place for you, and everyone's welcome, right? all the colors of the rainbow, and if you're not even on the rainbow, right? Like you're allowed to be here, but you have to be respectful, right? And you have to respect everyone else's place. And so, wherever you guys are in your lives and whatever areas that you're in, if it's not there, create it, right? Because there's people and young people behind us who need those spaces, who need to see ourselves in those roles, and who need to be able to walk in those rooms and feel like they can belong there. And so, just continue to challenge yourself to kind of make those spaces. And if they are there, support them, right? What she's doing, support that, right? Because again, that makes it bigger. It spreads the word out. Every one piece that we're doing right here is spreading out to someone else in our network, and now they know that that's available. So if they want to go into rowing, they want to start to replicate what's on the outside, on the inside of those lines, right? They know where they can start. And so, supporting each other as well in those avenues that we create is also just as important. Being here today is awesome because we're helping Stoop Pigeon with everything that they're doing in the city. Amazing stuff, right? But imagine when this wasn't available. It wasn't available for me when I was coming out. Definitely not in my early 20s. I was still in Jen. I was around here back in the day. And it did not quite look like this. I'll just say that. But shout out to us honestly making this aware for people who are not necessarily here for this event. They still have to listen to it, right? So shout out to us.
Yes. And so much too that we're talking about is in that we're taking that space and we're claiming space that was very intentionally taken away from us or never given to us. And that is a huge part of the work that we're doing and the fight that we're a part of is in, all right, if people aren't going to listen, how much louder, how many more people can I get to be in this space with me until people are listening? And back to love as an action and allyship as an action is that I'll always say allyship is a verb. Because if we are not doing something in our daily practices, then what do we have to show for that? And in that too, where I love being on my panel with my other queer folks too, but also not necessarily the fact that, and I love y'all, this is not a you thing, this is a overall in the community space, but just because someone is queer in their sexuality doesn't inherently make them an ally to trans people or to non-binary people. That's an extra step of work that's absolutely needed in our community. Because the gatekeeping that happens in our community is deeply harmful and painful too. So even to be able to be on this panel and talk about the diversity of queer experience and the diversity of trans experience is something that more people need to hear. And like Tony was saying, right? He's like, I'm excited to learn. I'm excited to learn. I do this as my everyday practice in my business and in my lived experience, and I'm learning something new in every single conversation that I'm having. So being able to be a life learner and being able to grow in those spaces to even accept, right, what Denise was sharing with us, which is that we need playing fields that are actually level. That's not how athletics or our world has ever been, right? The inequity that has continued to exist, and so it's in holding folks accountable in, hey, this is what's missing, and this is the whole house and kingdom I have built, and I'm gonna invite you in to hear these stories and to do this work and to show with windows and mirrors, right? You may not have seen your existence represented, but we're gonna create that together and today. So as we're thinking about allyship in action and thinking about belonging, what I heard from a lot of us is the fact that we were seeking out places where we could be included. But in order to be included, we oftentimes had to hide who we were or not be able to fully exist and speak with that freedom and that liberation of this is the person I love, this is the family I'm a part of. And so thinking about the really important differences between an inclusive space and a space of belonging. And that the way that I typically describe that, right? An inclusive space that exists here in trans folks, we are allowed to be there. We're an addition. So this space exists, you can be here. Oftentimes it feels a little more like tolerance. And that I would argue that it's not enough. We need our inclusive spaces. Let's at least get to inclusive spaces. But we very intentionally called our event today Belonging in Sports. Because how do we surpass just that inclusion into belonging? And belonging is about affirmation. Belonging is about seeing each individual for the person that they are, removing assumptions and allowing those identities to be honored and cherished so that we're not in the space despite or in spite who we are and who we love and how we exist, but we're there because we are honored for those reasons. And belonging is affirmation. Inclusive spaces don't inherently have that affirmation. An inclusive space does not necessarily show us similar to a space of belonging, that you are welcomed here. You don't have to guess if I'm a safer person or if you can trust that I can hold you in your complexity and your beauty as a human being. So what do we need to see from those spaces to move past just inclusion into belonging? Right? Belonging is a feeling where we just get to exist, where we don't have to just survive, but we can thrive. So, and I'll bring it back. I will land the plane. I will. I promise. I always do, somehow. We will not run out of fuel. This is safe. This is safe. If y'all have stories that you want to share about like an inclusive space that you've been in and that difference in that feeling in a belonging space. Because my hope is that for our audience here, we're like, what are the things that we can actually identify? Because you only know what you experience. So when we can share, this is what we experience, and this is what I would have loved to see from my people, now we're accountable. Now we're allies in action, and I'm gonna push it one step further. Now we can be accomplices. Now we can actually be the co-conspirators that we deserve to have so that these spaces are actively and intentionally being created. So, inclusion versus belonging, our own lived experiences, giving folks perspectives. Who would like to start us off? Yes.
Let's go.
Speaking of landing the plane, I did drive by Newark Airport today. I waved hi to all the Spirit airplanes on behalf of all of us. So I thank you for landing the plane. One thing that I said often to my coworkers who happen to be people of color was just like individuality and the idea of being an individual kind of feels like a privilege sometimes. And most of the times I walk into spaces, especially if it's a boathouse or a sports space, like when I walk on Kelly Drive, I know I'm probably the only Asian American woman there. And so I know, not that I'm not, but I gotta be on my best behavior because anything I do right now, they're gonna place on any other Asian American person or Asian person in general. Which there's a lot of privilege to that. That's a whole nother conversation, but just putting that aside, landed that plane. Speaking of Kelly Drive, I would say that there are two places, at least two places that I'm aware of on Kelly Drive that do have that space of belonging. They actually don't even have walls. The Black woman-owned community rowing club called BLJ Community Rowing, which is, again, a boathouse without walls, and how inviting that could be. But also, on the other hand, you say they don't have running electricity or plumbing. The other boathouse that doesn't have running electricity or plumbing is Philadelphia City Rowing. And they don't have any walls, and they have the most accurate representation of Philadelphia on the river at all times. And for these places to have such high rates of belonging and yet the least amount of resources, something to acknowledge, but then also something to celebrate in terms of, well, this is